Hi, welcome to Ask the Manager. Today we have Jason Palitch with us, and Jason is chair of the school committee. He's involved in all sorts of things in town. It's hard to keep up with everything he does. He's on town meeting member, Precinct 8. Precinct 8?
Correct, Precinct 8.
And he is on the board of Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services. And what am I forgetting? Anything else?
Probably a bunch of things, but that's good enough.
And Jason has been involved with town issues since at least high school.
About then, yep.
So we've watched Jason grow up to be a big boy, and so he is. And
although I believe you also started attending town meeting when you were in high school.
I was young when I started to put my 2 cents worth in, and the only other two people I can think of in the last 30-ish years, I could be wrong, but I recall Joe Ricca started very young, and Paul Zekas.
So the four of us, yeah, all wound
Why?
up somewhere in a similar
I don't
direction.
know. I don't know why, but it's a good thing. We've been involved in the community, and that's what everybody should want to do. So with that, Jason, you were chair of the Beal, co-chair.
Yep, along with Selectman Beth Cassavant.
For the Beal, what would you call that? Beal
Community Supporters for Beal was our official name.
And you had a lot of success with that?
We did. Just under 70% of Shrewsbury voters this past week, obviously we're here in early November, approved the debt exclusion to fund the town's portion of the new construction. Every precinct by a 2-to-1 margin at least. So we were very, very pleased, and on behalf of the school committee, want to extend our thanks to the community, and I'll just say about the Community Supporters for Beal team, a lot of citizens of town put a lot of time and effort into that project. I mentioned Beth Cassavant from the Board of Selectmen co-chaired the effort with me. All volunteer team. Jason Molina was our campaign manager. Suzanne Remington. I'm going to stop naming people because I'm already forgetting people. Aaron Ryan was our treasurer. Kelly, who did our social media. Just a great, fantastic team. Big volunteer effort, but connected very well with the community. Found a lot of support for the project, and the voters spoke loudly and clearly in support of Beal. So just thank you to everybody.
And so why do you think it was so successful at the voting booth?
I think it's the need. I think the need was clearly presented by, all parties that were involved and interested. And I think one of the unique things about this, although, the middle school and everything certainly touches every student, but this is a new elementary school that's going to impact every elementary school age student. It's not just about the replacement of Beal. It's about providing new educational opportunities in kindergarten. It's about providing relieving some of the pressures in the other schools and allowing us to get back and having art, in its own room and music in its own room, and just providing those educational standards across the entire district. So it's a great opportunity for our educators to, get back involved with kids in that community school setting on a K-4 basis. So.
And how do you feel about the location?
Oh, we're excited about the location. We put the pedal to the metal the next morning and started moving things with the state and told them, we told you we'd be back, and we're back. So I think it provides, greater community improvement in Lake Street, straighten it out, a great location for a school. It'll be a wonderful educational setting, both inside and outside the building. Just can't wait to see it rise out of the ground and come to fruition.
Would you say that it's centrally located?
So actually, one of the things that I think went into the building committee's consideration, and this is certainly, the school committee didn't select the location, but we weighed in. Actually, if you look at where the town has grown in recent years, a lot of that growth has been south of Route 9. Of all of the schools in our system, only Coolidge is south of Route 9. Floral serves most of that area, but of course it's above. So it's relatively, it would be a quick drive to the center of town, but it's sited in an area where a lot of growth has occurred, but there really are no school buildings in the immediate area. So it kind of fills sort of a geographic need as well, which, for transportation and other things makes a lot of logistical sense.
What I liked was that when you think about school buses and wintertime and travel and all that goes into that, I think the property is conducive to, or the best it could be for inclement weather, I guess is what I'd like to say. I know when we looked at Camp Wanigan, do you call it Camp Wanigan, the one behind?
Winnigan. Wanigan?
Wanigan? Depends if you were a Girl Scout or not.
Oh, I was not, so.
Behind Flynn's truck
I only know it
stop.
from the map.
Behind Flynn's truck
Yep.
stop. It was down in a hole. And the first thing I thought, oh, that's an interesting location. But I was concerned with buses getting up and down that hill and cars getting up and down that hill in bad weather. So I was glad to see that another location was found. A lot of people had questions and comments during this campaign about why we weren't using the Allen property.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Allen property ended up being too much of a challenge to build an elementary school on. In order to, I think, create the best educational environment, we were really shoving a school into a property that may have had enough acreage, but just wasn't configured as favorably as Glavin was. And
That would have been a parking deck, not
Yes.
a parking lot.
Yeah, it would have been a real challenge. You know, we could have got the building on there, but it would have been crammed in, and we wouldn't have got the educational environment out of it. There would have had to been a parking structure that was put there in order to meet the demands, you know, during activities and, you know, parents of multiple grades being there on site.
And I would just add to that too. I know that the town has long eyed the hopefulness for some business development there. Building the school there would have removed that possibility. Where Glavin is going now it was state property. It wasn't anything that we were deriving tax revenue from, and it's going to continue to have a public use. Where, despite challenges to the site, Shrewsbury's still a fast-growing place, and there's some development potential for the Allen property, which is I think what the town meeting intended way back in maybe 2002. When the purchase was made, so.
Yeah, and the Shrewsbury Development Corp., which oversees that's done a lot of work recently. We received a mass development site readiness grant recently of about almost $400,000. So we've actually revising the master plan, and we'll be looking forward to designing a will be called the North Roadway back to that site, which given the economic conditions, we think we're hitting that market in a favorable time and refreshing our master plan for it, and should be able to attract some development. You know, there has been interest in the property. We haven't landed the right fish yet, but just recently, you know, we've talked to companies, and we still have an active broker on the project that solicits business interest for us. So we're hopeful that we'll be turning that around and get a lot more activity and interest in it.
And Kevin had alluded to this a little bit, but when we do projects like these, a lot of the focus is, of course, on the building, the location, the layout, things like that. But obviously, from a school committee perspective, we always come back to the educational program as well. It's buildings are, their walls and beams, what's going on inside. And as Kevin mentioned, while there's a new school, and I know folks always get excited about the new school when one comes in, the reality is that no matter what elementary school a student is in, they're going to see an improvement in the way the space is used. So in our 4 elementaries right now, there aren't dedicated spaces for art and music as was intended, and that can get in the way of the program sometimes. This is going to be a space improvement across all of the elementary schools, whether you go there or not. And something the school committee is particularly excited about when this new building is open. We are finally going to be able to offer full-day kindergarten to all families who want it. As you guys certainly know, but not everybody at home, if you haven't had kids in the system recently, might. We lottery for what available full-day K slots we have, and the reason isn't budgetary, it's space. We don't have the physical space to have full day for every family that wants it, so we lottery for the spaces we do have, and the families that don't have it can have half day, but that's it. You go back 10, 15 years, and that was sort of the norm. Today, something like 95% of students in Massachusetts have access to full day kindergarten, and we're one of that little tiny slice that doesn't, and we're such a successful district, and you think of Shrewsbury as a place that people come for the purpose of being in the schools, so a lot of people are surprised. We're one of the last trains out of the station on that, so it's a space issue. It's going to address the space issue, and Massachusetts intends, and it's not required, but intends for its program for kindergarten to be delivered in a full-day setting, and we're finally going to be able to do that.
When do you anticipate that to take place?
So we will have the space capacity to do it once the building opens in 2021. Right now, there's also a fee associated with full-day kindergarten, but the school committee has decided as a policy matter, as part of our 5-year goals, that by 2022, the fee will be gone. And so while we pretty much had to raise all of our other fees, we are gradually reducing the full-day kindergarten fee, so we gradually step away from that revenue, and it doesn't create a big cost problem at once. But the building will be open in 2021, and ideally, we can do it right at that time.
So your school committee's planning for this
Planning
trend.
for it to be free,
And
yes.
you still have a couple of years ahead of
Yep.
the schools before that'll take place.
Correct.
But it'll be a very exciting time.
It will be.
I know when my kids were kindergarten age, I wanted them home. I don't know if it's the Italian mother in me or what, but I wanted my babies home. But the world's changed. More people are working, more people are out of the house. And when I look back now and I look at the way kids are today, I think that they like being in school for kindergarten all day.
I was a half-day kid myself, and most kids were. It was the norm
Yeah.
back then. But, in addition to parents working and convenience of family schedules, there's a lot of evidence that, the more you can give kids at that early age, kindergarten and even pre-kindergarten, you're setting them up for success more down the road. There are so many things you can learn and experiences you can have at that age where you look at what's being taught in a kindergarten classroom, and it looks more like a second grade classroom 20 years ago. I mean, I watched some of these little. It's stunning what they're capable of doing, but that really sets them up better to be successful in their later school years. So that actually leads me into my first question.
There you go.
'cause
We're
of
going to get
course-
into the questions
So now
now.
that it's passed, I'm hoping the manager might be able to walk for our viewers through the timeline. Obviously, we're looking at fall 2021, but why don't you take us through the steps of the mechanics involved here?
Yeah, so we're going to have a big conversation about this at the building committee meeting, which will happen on Tuesday, which will be the 13th of November at the town hall at 6 o'clock. But we are moving forward already. You'll see the building committee will look to make amendments to our contracts with the owner's project manager and the architect at that meeting on the 13th. That will set us up for the duration of the design work and the administration work that's related to the oversight of the actual construction. We have to borrow money really soon in the near future, and we'll do that in late December or early January through a short-term anticipation note that will take us into the spring or early summer once we really have a good idea what the guaranteed maximum price will be for this project. And what's really interesting is that we are using the construction manager at risk model, which means we will actually we'll be selecting a general contractor or construction manager within the next 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll have that company on board. We've actually already pre-qualified through the state process. We had, I believe, 8 interested parties. We've narrowed it down to 3. Those will be interviewed by a subcommittee, and a recommendation will be made. We have fantastic companies that are interested in building this school for us, very high quality, a few of whom we've already worked with on various other projects within the town in recent years. So we'll actually be selecting that company, and they'll actually come on board and work side by side with the building committee and the owner's project manager and the architect as we design it. So if you do the other method of construction, which is design, bid, build, it's that linear sequential process, and you say, here's our final documents, tell us how much it's going to cost to build. With this project, we say, come in early, help us design it, because you're going to have to build it. So that takes away a lot of change orders and cost overruns that you see in many other projects, and it's a great tool that we can use to help manage that cost and keep it on track. You'll see work out on the site probably in June or July of next year, if not a little bit sooner. We need to do demo work. We'd like to get a lot of the roadway work done and not have that in conflict with
So you
the
think the
actual school
existing
construction.
structures on the site will start to come down as
Absolutely.
early as next summer?
Yeah, early as next summer, and we'll be in full site work and construction by next fall. And it'll take us a long time to build that school, so it's going to be a big building, and we'll be off to the races here pretty soon.
Excellent. When do we think the roadway improvement phase of that is going to occur?
We want to do that early in the process, so that could start really as soon as early next summer as well. The idea would be to get that all shaped up and not having the roadway work conflicting with the work that's going on the site.
It's tough to imagine Lake Street without that sharp curve that we've all come to know and love so well, but it's exciting.
Yeah, the plan is to do the work without closing the roadway to the greatest extent possible. There may be a day or two here and there, but we're doing a lot of work of the roadway work beside the existing road, so we can do a lot of construction and base preparation and then kind of shift traffic over like they do on a major highway between the two roadways as we develop it. We've got to move utilities and infrastructure and everything else that lies under that road and drainage to make it all work in the end. So yeah, the removal of the buildings and the roadway work will start next construction season.
Great. Speaking of roadway, next question, switching gears a little bit. There's a lot of roadway projects going on right now, as there often are this season. I take 290 to and from work, and I think at this point I've thrown my alignment off on my morning commute. But I think of the western section of Main Street in particular. What are some of the bigger projects that are going on now? What's their purpose? What's their status?
Yeah, so we are wrapping up the roadway construction season. We did a lot this summer, although not roadway related. We replaced all the water mains in the Edgemere neighborhood and connecting a few final homes into the new main. And that contractor is actually moving up to Francis Avenue, and we'll continue to work through the early fall and into early winter on that project. We did roadway resurfacing on Suntec Boulevard, which is our biggest roadway resurfacing project for this summer. And I don't know if you've been on it, but it's wonderful, flat, smooth, and well done by our contractor.
Is that its first resurfacing? That road's
It
not that
is,
old.
yep.
It's probably 10 or 15 years old, maybe or less.
Yep, yeah, so it is the first resurfacing. And like I said, they did a really good job. The second major roadway portion that is just a one-year project is up in the Colonial Drive area. A lot of those developments are getting on 20 plus years, and we need to do some resurfacing work to maintain the quality. We're finishing up handwork and work around driveways within the next few days. I think I talked to the highway division manager today. We have about a day and a half of work left on that. And so those are just our run-of-the-mill annual maintenance programs, for the roadway resurfacing. And then the Main Street project is our, TIP, our Transportation Improvement Project, a major project, which will take until about next year at this time to actually finish up. So did a lot of the drainage work on that phase of the project this year. We actually installed some curbing on St. John's Hill because of some stormwater issues.
And it looks like a sidewalk actually might go in.
There will be a sidewalk, yep, that actually goes in there. So it'll be a good pedestrian enhancement, making the roadway safer. The width of the lanes will actually be a little more narrow, so the pavement width in and of itself is going to be about the same or a little less in every area, but the striping on the roadway will be neck down to hopefully slow some traffic in that area. There's a lot of activity with the fields and just a lot of traffic in the area. So, so there's new lights, new traffic lights at the intersection with Old Mill, and just a lot of work. So kind of all the dirty work happened on that project this summer, and the pretty finished work will happen next year. Unfortunately, with the heavy rains that we've had some bad stormwater runoff in that area, and we're looking to fix that as we get into the winter season. And our final major roadway-related project was we redid all the subsurface draining on Boylston Circle when we're wrapping up that project, cleaning up folks' yards and kind of making those repairs. And that's a major project that will help alleviate some flooding from the roadway into individuals' properties and will put us in a good position within the next year or two. We can come back and repave the roadway and finish that.
So there's several roads now that need to be repaved, and it won't happen at least till next year. How will that affect the plows?
It certainly has an impact, and the better that we can keep the roadway surfaces, the less impact there is on the plows. So it's something that we do think about. We'll actually, on the meeting November 13th of the Board of Selectmen, Jeff Howland, DPW Director, will be in to discuss the town's pavement management plan, which is a numeric-based index that kind of assesses the overall roadway conditions within the community. That's what we use to prioritize things as we spend our funding. Historically in town, we've used Chapter 90 to do our annual roadway maintenance programs, which is a little less than $1 million. great state revenues this year, so we're going to get an additional $200,000. So thanks to the legislature and the administration for sharing that with communities. Additional $40 million in Chapter 90 funds are going to be distributed. So that means that we'll be in a better position to do a little bit more project next year. For an example, so folks can gauge the cost of a project, Centec Boulevard cost about $800,000 to resurface.
Wow.
This
Pretty
year.
long road, though.
Yeah, so it is. Yeah, it's a long stretch of road. It was our biggest project. But having those additional funding will put us in a good position. And we also, over the years have been stockpiling funds for the new salt shed, which that has
The
salt
salt
in it.
shed.
Which is open. I saw
Yeah,
the picture
it's
on the
open.
town's
Yeah.
Twitter account.
The John
yeah.
Knipe shed?
Yeah, the John Knipe salt shed
Salty
is
John's.
full of salt and receiving more. It's a huge benefit. We actually had some internal discussions as we were ordering salt this year, because we can actually hold an entire year's worth of salt within that facility, that one shed. It puts us in a great position to both be prepared for storms, but also manage the marketplace. And when the price goes down, we can stockpile it. When it goes up, we can use our reserves. So it puts us in a good situation well into the future. So we're happy to have that up and running. And during that conversation that I mentioned earlier with the Highway Division Manager, no one should fear. We calibrated our salt spreaders today, so we'll be ready to go when the snow flies.
Good. Now, you talk about all the road work. People are in a hurry. People are always focused on driving faster to get to where they want to go. And I'm always worried about the pedestrians that are walking where there's no sidewalks. For example, coming here, there was a woman walking on Old Mill Road coming down from Maple Ave. And she was walking where there was no sidewalk with a young girl. And I thought, it's commute time, and it's such a, of all times.
Old Mill in particular.
It's just such a dangerous time for her to be walking without a sidewalk. And I'm really surprised that we haven't taken, well, I know we put sidewalks aside for during the recession, or whatever you want to call it, depression, recession. And so that's one spot. And then coming here on the back road where you'd think, it's a back road, it should be okay. Another woman walking probably got out of work and was taking her afternoon walk, and she's not on a sidewalk because they're not available. More people want to walk, but
And
it's
I've
just
noticed that.
so much more dangerous. Route 9, people walking. We hadn't seen pedestrians on Route 9 for years, and now every time I'm on Route 9, there's pedestrians.
Walkability in a town like ours, I think, is becoming something people want. Growing up, you took a car everywhere. But for health reasons now, for environmental reasons, people want to get out and walk when they don't have to. And, we have some areas, I look at Lakeway Commons, which is sort of set up to be a walkable development. But, of course, walking on Old Mill in traffic is a little dicey. So I know, Kevin, in the past you've looked at walkability as a long-term goal. Obviously, there are some projects that are going to be easier than others, but what are some of your thoughts?
Yeah, so the Complete Streets program is what really comes to mind, because we're now entering into phase 3 where we'll be eligible for state funding. So we have our list. We'll prioritize the projects within that list, which will give an initial set of money of about $80,000 that we can use towards projects, and then we'll apply on an annual basis, for additional funding when those projects come up. So that will enhance our walkability. And then I completely agree with you. Earlier today, the assistant manager and I were out doing one of our routine reviews of complaints that we had on the physical nature out in the community, and we were headed down Main Street just past Dean Park Pizza, and someone couldn't wait for us. They had to pass us, headed towards North Plains. So
And why?
yeah, everyone's just in a hurry to get behind that next car. But, so part of the, one of the other things that I'm happy to be able to talk about, and it's all from the work of Representative Kane, is that there's going to be a new pedestrian beacon, and will overhang the road at Gale Ave on Maple.
Oh,
Right by
good.
Shrewsbury Youth and
Yeah.
Family
Good.
Services,
Yes.
actually, yeah.
So
it's a great project.
That's good.
The selectmen are going to consider authorization, which they will more than likely authorize the mast to be constructed within the right-of-way of Gale, but it will overhang, and it'll have a sensor on it to flash whenever there's pedestrians
great.
there. So we're happy about that to improve safety. And Mass DOT is the one that's paying for it and installing it.
Before we go any further, we did just have midterm elections, which was amazing as far as voter turnout
Turnout was
early
huge.
voting, and the town clerk's office. They were phenomenal. They were troopers. They just did such a great job. They worked so hard. They were so busy.
And they ran 2 elections concurrently, which is, they did a lot more than most clerks' offices had to do.
They should really be acknowledged and recognized and congratulated for the great job that they did.
No, they did, and you know, they were always there, smile on their face.
Yes.
I mean, there was times, you know, when the line was down past the manager's office and almost to the school department with folks waiting in line. Everyone was patient and calm, so thank the voters for that. You know, everyone got to participate in the process. But yeah, the you know, staff in the clerk's office it did a wonderful job. They're here long hours, just because, you know, it said that the early voting closed every day at 4:30 doesn't mean someone doesn't get in line at 4:29, and
Right.
extends everyone's day. And then
Right.
we've got to process that ballot and seal it and separate it out by precinct, so we're ready on election day to get those processed. But they did an awful lot of work. We're there very late on election night trying to handle the tallies and make sure everything's done properly. So thank you to Sandy and Sharon and their team. For
They did a
all the
great
work
job.
They did.
They did a
And the
great
poll
job.
workers and the election workers, you know, as well.
Yes.
It's a tough thing. I know, obviously running 2 elections concurrently, there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of confusion. So in addition to early voting, in addition to extremely high turnout, they handled all of that. I didn't hear any complaints all day long. They handled it just very, very professionally. So kudos to everyone involved here. Exactly right.
I meant to look before we came on. Does anyone know what the voter turnout was in town?
Oh, yeah, I could pull that up. So we passed 15,000 ballots. If I've got cell reception right here, I can pull it up pretty quickly and tell you what.
So we're over 3,000 early voters.
Can you
There were
imagine?
over 5,000
Over
early
5,000
voters. Yes.
early voters.
In our first experience with early voting, which is a presidential cycle, and granted, it was the first time you do anything, it's going to be a little bit lower. It was something like 4,900 early votes, and at 4:30, it was 5190.
Really?
I want to say 5193. We absolutely crushed it. But I'm looking here, and so we were 15,874. Is the total combination of yes and no on Beal, so there are probably a few blanks on that. So, you got pretty close to 16,000 ballots. 17,518 is presidential level. I mean, I think probably 2014, which was a midterm, it was probably less than 14,000 votes. That's a smashing turnout.
Made it exciting.
Yeah, it was fun.
The only thing I missed, because I voted early, was you don't get to see all the poll workers when you, on election day.
Yeah.
So you take the good with the bad.
You could have voted in the state election early and then come on the day of to vote in the town, or the other way around.
It was good. It was all good. It was fun, actually.
They all did a great job.
Yep. So
So,
I'll let you go.
Okay, switching gears a little bit, actually coming back to roadway. So the town center, I know that a survey was recently conducted. I think it closed maybe 2 days ago,
Yeah, a couple
yesterday.
days ago, yeah.
Soliciting resident input on the town center, and I believe that there's actually going to be a public forum on the 13th related to that. So tell us a little bit about the work that's being done there.
Yeah, so I mean, that's part of, a couple of grants that we've got to focus on improving the center, both the parking grant that we did and the downtown initiative. I have to give kudos to all the business owners down there that are rallying around each other and developing the Town Center Business Association. So it's really that. It's really in the planning and the conceptual stage. We're looking for, what folks have for a vision for the community, what they want to see, what types of shops, what types of public amenities, things like that in the downtown and the town center area, and we'll look to implement that. That's something that I love. I love the process from, community engagement and survey to policy to strategy, goals, and implementation. So we're in the early stages, and everyone can get in on the ground floor and provide their information and their thoughts and opinions, and we look forward to that.
So what is the event now that's happening on November 13th? Obviously, some folks watching this, it might be a little bit after, but I believe there's a public forum.
Yeah, there's a public forum that's related to that, basically the same topics and conversation discussion related to the survey.
And I might have put the information in my calendar in case folks are interested. It's going to be November
at the
13th,
fire department.
5 to 7 p.m. at the fire department on Church
Headquarters.
Road at the headquarters. Yep. So anyone who's interested, and that's open to the public, anyone
Yep.
who's interested in coming to be a part of that conversation, that's fantastic. And of course, the future of the existing Beal structure at some point is going to be part of the conversation. I know we have a reuse committee set up. Have they done any work yet? What's sort of the timetable that's envisioned for them?
Yeah, so
I know that obviously the bulk of that we wanted the project to be approved first.
Right. So they did. They dove right in and did a lot of analysis and had a couple meetings, and then realized that, one of the things that they want to test and understand is what market exists for the reuse, on the private side of things. Obviously, they got the determination and did the legwork to ensure that there's no municipal use for a town or school. But then they got into a scenario where it was like, okay, but if we're really not going to move out until the fall of 2021 or the summer of 2021, it's really still too early to kind of assess the market conditions and what can put us in the best position. So they'll start to slowly gain momentum again, and they're part of these downtown initiatives and have had a voice into it, and that can be a major property and cornerstone to any redevelopment projects. And everyone's thrown a lot of really good ideas, and we have had interest from private developers. We've walked through the school with
Not
private
surprised.
developers already, and folks that would be able to bring a project to fruition. We're very excited about. So, no doors closed yet, and we'll just see what comes of it.
Is shared parking going to be part of those conversations? I know one of the things, obviously, the space constrictions of our town center, we don't have anything like a municipal lot. There's limited street parking, and of course, there's the library and the church, but that's parking for the library and parking for the church. Is that going to be part of maybe the discussion there?
Yeah, we definitely want to make it a part of it. We need to find connectivity to that area, to the town center, and I think there's a number of ways that we could do that. It may not be right on Maple and Main, but we can find some attractive, lighted, comfortable walkways for folks to get to if it does end up becoming a major parking venue. The parking study that was done identified a lot of parking spaces, so we're actually moving forward with another grant application through the Mass Downtown Initiative to do wayfinding signs, basing that off of the parking study. So that'll be part of the conversations in the coming weeks. We'll be picking out, if we get that grant, we'll be picking out the signage, what we should be identifying, types of signage, the look, the feel of it. So we're excited about that as well. And wayfinding signage can really help with, those coming in the community and those that have been here that just don't realize that, hey, yes, you can park here at this time. So that'll be another good enhancement.
You talked about parking at Beal, and all of a sudden I thought, if we do anything with parking there, we can't just do it for here and now. We need to do it for the future, which means that being creative about how to create more spaces, whether it be like a 2-level garage or something like that, not just a flat parking lot, because that will only take care of us for a short while.
No, definitely. It's a for the school's purposes, it was a small property, but for the purposes of you look at the structures that are there now, it's a fairly large property as well, and I think we're a little bit limited. We have our residential areas going right up against the center. I live close to the
You
center
have to be
myself.
respectful to the neighbors too.
Yep, exactly. But I love the concept of having more business opportunities that you can just walk to in the center of town. Obviously, we're so heavily residential. So actually, another question I had. So obviously, we've got Lakeway Commons. It's going pretty well. It seems like everything there is pretty successful. What's the next big thing for Shrewsbury now that we've got all this business growth happening? What are you hearing?
Well, we're still working with the development at Edgemere. I mean, I think that project is still very viable. They're still very interested, and I don't see anything bigger than that right now. And I have
And that's to be anchored by Market Basket?
Market Basket, yep.
What's the timeline?
It's behind schedule in my opinion, but we're actually have all final legal documentation over to the owner of Barton Trimount, which is the asphalt plant at the corner of Lake Street and Route 20 there. So we can get the pump station underway. We're in final design process for the new pump station that will go there. That pump station will really unlock that aspect of the corridor, although it's not unneeded. It's not 100% requirement. It will make everything much easier in that area. So we'll be going out to bid in December, early January to have a contractor come in and begin to construct that pump station. And we have an obligation through the memorandum of agreement with that developer that we'll have that pump station operating late in January 2019. And I would hope to see some permitting and activities and flurry around that property within the next 6 weeks or so to get them started on the moving from the design phase and into the permitting phase. So.
Now, what kind of, and I know this would depend on the specifics of the site, but what kind of traffic adjustments might need to be made there? Obviously, that's an area that can sometimes back up a little bit. You do have one light. Would it be sort of a four-way intersection with a more sophisticated light, or were we talking entrance at some other part of Route 20?
So I can tell you we partnered with the developer and submitted a Mass Works grant for $4.2 million for intersection improvements that span from all around the Lake Street intersection. Would include a four-way light there. It would be a four-way intersection, and allow for turning lanes in every direction and widening of the roadway where possible. Really from almost the Route 140 interchange down to several hundred or 200 feet past Lake Street. So we've got to tie all that in. Mass DOT
So actually, just to clarify, some improvements to where the 140-20 interchange might be part of that as well.
Yeah, so there's a separate initiative, but Mass DOT is really focused on that. It's one of the highest traffic crash incident in the state where
I can see it.
UPS and trucks are coming in and out. You'll lose a lane to get up on 140
It
from
disappears.
Route 20. Yep.
It just disappears.
So-
Well, I noticed, and you can always tell when someone's familiar with the area and someone's not, because I grew up not that far, I grew up off Cherry Street, but some folks not understanding if you're coming south on 140 or north on 140, where you turn to head in which direction
is
at 20.
convenient, yeah.
And I've seen cars, they start to make a turn and they stop, and they just shoot and keep going when they realize they're about to do the wrong thing. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy sometimes.
Yeah, you're
but
right.
Mass DOT is really focused on that from the whole Route 20 corridor, but right there at the Route 140 interchange, there's ongoing discussions with UPS there about changing the location where their trucks come in and out of their facility. They need to do some septic and sewer improvements because they're actually not tied into the town sewer, so we're working with them on maybe constructing another pump station there because that's the low spot. So we're looking as long-term as possible every time, a new, I won't call it a superficial project comes up, but when a new project comes up, the first thing we do is retreat and say, okay, what can we do for the long term to improve sewer, improve access to properties for property owners and businesses. But yeah, I think hopefully 5 years from now when we're all talking here that we'll say, wow, what a difference from Route 40 down past Lake Street because of all that development and state and private investment.
Interesting. You talked about a four-way intersection at Lake Street and Route 20. It wasn't that long ago we were saying, do you think we could have a dogleg? Because the traffic coming through would just plow on through. And now, we don't need a dogleg, we need a four-way intersection. So that will be pretty complex. That'll be
Well, I think even
outstanding for the people who travel in that area.
I think that once this project is done, the residents of Shrewsbury, either in town or in an immediately adjacent town, I think every single grocery store chain operating in the state will be serving Shrewsbury residents. I can't think of one we don't have, because Wegmans and Roche Brothers we have right next door, Whole Foods, Stop and Shop, Price Chopper, we're going to have Market Basket. Hannaford's.
Trader Joe's.
We have our own Trader Joe's. It's Hannaford. We don't have a Hannaford's. So Kevin, you put that on your to-do
Okay,
list.
Yeah.
I know a
That'll
lot
be the
of folks.
17th grocery store.
I love grocery stores and don't give me any more.
And you know what? I do some things
I
at Whole
don't-
Foods. I do
yes.
some things at Wegmans, and pretty
Yes.
much everybody's like that nowadays. It's
Yeah.
great.
It is.
Good to have those choices.
And the competition. The competition's good, but a lot of times you can't get everything you want at all of the different
place.
stores. And it's really funny because I'll stand in an aisle and I'll say, obviously there's not a lot of Italian people that shop here because the selection, they're missing half of what most typical Italian homes would have for
I love that fresh pasta
Groceries.
station at Whole Foods, though. I'm going to put on quite a bit of weight and lose quite a bit of money going there as regularly as I do.
it is a good pasta station. You're right.
I'm glad I don't live within walking distance of that.
I
I could walk, though.
I had a certain type of macaroni in my hand, and they're called Mafaldas, I don't know if, and I said to the woman at the register, how much are these? And when she told me, I said, I don't want them. They were so
See, I would have just bought them.
Oh my God, but because I buy them in another store. But they looked so good. I mean, they really did. I bought their raviolis that are really good too. Okay, we
Great.
can get back
Yeah,
off-
anyway,
off
we can go on, but
groceries.
there's a lot of exciting things happening. So another, question I had, obviously, marijuana has been a policy issue that's, come up quite a few times, and we here in Shrewsbury. What is the status of the applicants, both on the medicinal and recreational side? How many applicants do we have? How many licenses do we have? What's the timeline on that? And what are the sites for that?
Yeah.
Because I know that's something that residents have been interested or concerned with, depending on your perspective.
So Prime Wellness has full authorization from the town, everything that they need from the town, except for a special permit from the planning board, to open both medical and recreational establishment at 235 Hartford Turnpike. So Route 20, just up from the Edgemere Drive-In where Triborough Crane is, that same red brick building there, they would operate out of there. So they have all town approvals, again, except for the planning board special permit to be able to open up there.
And would they do anything to the site, or are they just planning to move it to the building as it is?
Renovate the building.
Okay.
And they've done some work within the building. I think they would like to do some site work as well, so you could possibly see that, but they're not the owner of the property, so I'm not
Okay.
sure what their long-term plans are for site improvements. So we have 2 retail establishments for adult use, so conceivably they would get their special permit, so that would leave 1. At their last meeting on October 23rd, the Board of Selectmen authorized me to begin negotiations with PharmaCann, which is another company that's interested in opening a medical and adult use facility at 939 Boston Turnpike, which is the former Power Sports Suzuki dealer down there close to Walnut Street. So they are in negotiations. We're exchanging documents, and they could potentially put themselves in line to get the second special permit. If they get the remaining local approvals from the Board of Selectmen, sign a host community agreement, and then they'd be on to their state licensure and everything else for that site. There's another company, Vitasphere, that is kind of the next mature in the process. In early September, the Board of Selectmen published a guidance to all interested parties that says you have to go through this process in order to get a host community agreement. And it was, we didn't use an RFP and say everything has to be in by such and such a date. We said, we'll take you as you come, and if we continue to meet our standards and approvals of various town staff members and the Board of Selectmen, ultimately through a public presentation, then you can proceed into the process to get a host community agreement. So those host community agreements really set up the financial agreement.
So the revenue piece of that,
Yeah.
does that only come into play in the host committee agreement, or is there a base and then the host committee
Yeah.
agreement is negotiated on top of that?
Yeah, so there's a base, which comes in the form of a 3% sales tax on all adult use sales.
And that
So
goes to the municipality?
it goes right to the municipality, just like the meals tax
Okay.
does. So filters up to the state and then back down to the municipality. And then on top of that would be the 3%, up to 3% that we can negotiate through the host community agreement to offset other community impacts.
So it sounds to me that all of these marijuana facilities, whether it be medical or not, are big businesses that you're talking about. None of them are mom and pop pot shops. They're, you don't have like Freaky Freddy on the corner selling
No.
pot in a storefront.
Yep.
You're talking about big businesses coming in.
So I can tell you a little bit about PharmaCann. Obviously, I don't know the numbers behind Prime Wellness, or I would share them. But so PharmaCann is a company that operates in 5 other states. They presented to the Board of Selectmen that they only operate in the highly regulated states, which means they don't operate in places like California, Colorado, Washington, and Oregon. They're more East Coast located. New York, Connecticut, in the Midwest and Illinois is where they were founded. They were very upfront and open with us. They said they are currently in talks with another company that would acquire them, and I was presented with a news article from the Chicago Tribune that said that purchase price was over $600 million that they would be bought out for all their facilities in all their states.
So related to that, though, because a concern that I have and a concern I think I know a lot of people have would be security at these sites. You know, obviously, when you speak in general terms regarding businesses, I prefer the mom and pop shops to the big chains. But I know that one thing's that's very concerning, obviously, families with kids, is what is the security setup going to be like at the sites? Obviously, we want to make sure that minors or people who otherwise shouldn't have access to the product are not doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. So what do you know, or what are we able to control about the security of the sites? And I would hope the companies have the resources to keep themselves secure.
Yeah. So a lot of that security is dictated through state law, and the companies are very interested in having these highly secure facilities, all of them that I've talked to. You know, I can tell you that when you go in the door, regardless of, to get in the door, regardless of if it's a medical sale or an adult use sale, you'll have to present an identification to show that you're over 21 years old. If you're not 21, you don't get to go in. You're then placed into a waiting area that is a separate area that you would wait in. You would then be greeted, and it's more one-on-one. If you and I went in together, we may be serviced by one retail associate if we so choose, but in order to get into the area where you can actually view product and eventually purchase product, you're assigned to a representative, and it's locked.
It's very different from walking into a store where you can maybe browse and pick up products and
browse.
look at them.
Yep.
It's more it's more like a medical setting. in that
Yeah,
regard.
it's more of like a jewelry store, to be honest with you. You know, with an airlock to get in the door, and locked cases where product is, and we can't go in and look at the $10,000 ring just because you feel like picking it up and seeing what it feels like. So it's really much like that setting, with, from the pictures that I see, to be honest with you, like an Apple store feel. Very sleek, very modern, very comfortable. So
Amazing. So we should at least touch on the fact that we did have a special town meeting. There were more articles than I expected. There were 16.
16.
And lots of transferring of money, formalizing zoning, or bringing it up to date. The transferring of money would be for either unforeseen circumstances or, which the one that was impressive to me was that there was a lightning strike on fire emergency radios, and so those needed to be replaced. So it's not that, which I was always concerned that we need to budget this stuff up front. A lot of this is unforeseen, and for our fast-moving society, things that we need to take care of now, we can't wait till next year, and so forth. So a lot of that housekeeping got done. And we had a citizens petition related to polystyrene, and that got passed, but it doesn't include schools.
It does.
It does include
It does.
schools.
So
if it's a food serving establishment.
Yes, so Shrewsbury Public Schools are licensed to serve food either by the Board of Health, the way a business would be licensed. So we are required to meet the same standards of cleanliness and safety that a food serving business would meet. So it would impact the school department. We did some pricing out. We have already our food services department has actually already done quite a bit of work to phase polystyrene out. So for example, cups and utensils, they've already shifted over. It's predominantly trays that are expanded polystyrene now. If we were to switch right now, and of course it's a few years before it takes effect, if we were to switch right now, the net impact cost would be something like $17,000. Obviously we're hopeful that the market might shift. I think in particular, Dunkin' Donuts, I know, and I don't know what their timetable is, but they have committed in New England, at least, to not use expanded polystyrene anymore. I can't imagine.
I think it's next year.
January 1st, 2020.
You have to,
2020.
I think of how many cups of coffee from Dunkin' Donuts are consumed in this state, and you have to imagine that's going to impact that market.
Right. I know by talking to the owner of Atlantic Poke that the equipment they use, whether it be the bowl that the food comes in, or the silverware, or the plastic, it's not plastic. It's all environmentally safe. So that organization just focused on that naturally. And it seems to me that newer businesses focus more on that independently, regardless of the law. So I think for those that don't, it's just going to be like a bit of a nudge, and they have plenty of time to use up what they have and start to order the appropriate supplies. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it won't be that disruptive of a transition. We do have plenty of time to go until it comes into effect January 1st, 2020. I think if the town can absorb the bag ban bylaw, we can absorb the styrofoam. There are a subset of businesses that we'll begin to target within, not too soon, but 6 months or so now, to make sure everyone's well aware in their ordering cycles and don't stock up. But it's I don't think it's shocking to anyone, to be honest with you. It's.
And I think the students,
There's a group of
pe-
Shrewsbury High School kids who took
Did
the
an
spirit of that,
incredible
and
job.
they did a great job. Yes.
And I also think that we said, now, you didn't do everything we wanted you to do, so you come
And
back
they came right
once you
back.
do it, and they did it.
Yep.
They did everything that was asked of them. They did it and came back respectfully and presented it again. They didn't give up, and I was so impressed with that.
It's good to see Shrewsbury High School kids at town meeting, just
Yep.
like you and I were. So someday they'll be sitting here
Someday.
and ask the manager as your guests.
It'll be them. Now, electronic voting at town meeting committee. I should know what it's called, but
I think it was just commission.
whatever.
Yeah.
So we're meeting, I'm appointed to that committee, and we're meeting, actually tonight after filming, we're meeting to go on to our next step with our planning and our research. And it's a good, diverse group of people. So far, we've been nice to one another. I made everybody say up front what our opinion was coming into it. And I think we all have an open mind to say, but we're willing to hear, the other side, just to see and be sure that we make the right decisions for the town. But there's a lot of background work being done for that, which is good.
I have to imagine, and I'm just guessing a little bit here, I have to imagine that for us, the logistics would be a little bit less complicated. I know, so for example, Westboro, which is open town meeting, uses it, and there was actually even, I want to say about a year ago, there was an issue where a couple, the wife had left, and I believe that, they handed the spouse the voting device and voted twice. Whereas with our representative town meeting, individually who has a right to be, who is an elected member, who is there. So I have to imagine the control that we have with a set elected group, it couldn't be as bad as what Westboro is doing.
We'll see.
Okay?
We'll see. The committee, actually, like I said, we're doing a lot of research, and we are checking with towns that have it in place already to see, and of course, the expense and so forth. So more to come on that, but I think it's a good committee and it's a diverse group, so it'll be good. Do we have storm early alert systems in place on any of our playing fields?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because I'm in Connecticut a lot with my grandchildren, and they have early warning systems for storms coming to get the kids off the field before the storm actually gets to the field. I don't know how we do it now or how it works, but the question came up with the new field, do we have storm early warning? And I didn't know if that was just an automatic.
I could be wrong.
No.
We'll have to leave that to the school committee member.
I'll have
To
to look
handle.
into that.
Okay.
I'll have to look into that. Actually, water system improvements, I know there's quite a bit of work. What are some of the big projects right now? I'm South Street and Main Street, so
Yep.
every so often I get a notification
Yep.
that something's going on. But
Yes.
what are some of the projects going on right now?
So the big news is that the new water treatment plant is our drinking water source right now. So that's all the water's coming through there. The bacteria is acclimating wonderfully. The manganese levels, both leaving the plant and way out in the system, are 100 and 200% reductions. So it's well below what it used to be, and well below the state acceptable level. So
And that's
we're very
in the
happy about
area
that.
on the north, it's the northwestern quadrant of town where those exceedances had been found
Well,
primarily?
yeah, but it, it was starting to trickle out into the whole distribution system. We had an excessive amount of accumulation up in the northern aspects, which we ice pigged, used the process of ice pigging where they basically jam
Just sounds so gross.
jam ice through high pressure.
Ice sounds better than manganese.
Yeah.
High pressure system that scours the inside of the pipes. The ice is abrasive and it's being shot through there at high pressure with water, and we open up the hydrants and prevent it from going into the aspects of the system that we don't, get the manganese out, and then have clean pipes. So we cleaned the Browning Road tank earlier this year and vacuumed out several inches, I think 4 inches of manganese off the bottom of that. So we made these major steps that hopefully. We're still going to have some isolated pockets as we move into the next few years, but what we were really running into is we'd have a break and it would be so disruptive to the system because there was that accumulation of manganese within the pipes. It wasn't in the water on a normal basis, but when you disrupted it and then had to flush the system to try to get the manganese out, it was like we were on a cycle of failure and just kept agitating the system. So the numbers are wonderful. The special town meeting approved the exploration and engineering process for a new well within the home farm well that would replace well 6-1, which is has our lowest water quality at this point. So we're going to move into an area to make it our highest water quality source. So we're replacing those wells and understanding what our contaminants are. Very low VOCs, no hex chrome, very low manganese, all treatable that we can get it to just about 0 parts per billion whenever it's leaving the system. So very happy about that. The selectmen are going to hold a roundtable at the water treatment plant within the next few weeks. So we'll have SMC give everyone a virtual tour.
That'll be interesting.
And then in this spring we'll have a full community open house, but it's just a little too muddy and dirty down there to do it this fall. And we'll have solar panels up for the official grand opening of the water treatment plant in the spring. So
It's exciting.
Town preparedness findings. So it's related for Shrewsbury to localized flooding, evacuation, traffic management, and emergency preparedness in general. Is there anything more that you would like to say about that?
Well, I mean, we put a lot of effort into the mitigation grant, the MVP grant program, a municipal vulnerability program, and we are now eligible to receive state grant funding to mitigate some of those concerns and be better prepared. That was the whole idea, was to find our areas of weakness and then go out and remedy them. So we'll be lining up for state funding for that, and we'll be working on those. So we did as much of create a plan and put our, understand what our troubles are rather than fix any of those, but we'll start fixing them.
Good. And in the information that was given, it said that by 2090, Shrewsbury will have Marilyn's wedding.
Yeah.
Weather?
Yep.
Excuse me, wedding.
Yep.
I thought it was supposed to be a little bit faster than 2090. Was 2090?
That's what I wrote.
thought it was like 2050 or something like
2050 or
that.
so.
Yeah.
Whatever,
Yeah.
it's coming, so we
Yeah.
complain about the humidity
My
now.
guess is
Good luck
Maryland's
to us.
weather without the January, February, March. I bet that'll get worse.
Probably.
Well, time's up, fast hour once again. Thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.